So hey, welcome back to the last video of the Born to Fly Law School video series. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about exam preparation. It's here, exam time's here, we have your back covered. So Emmanuel Obi, author of Born to Fly, is going to come up and give you some very, very helpful information.
All right, we have reached the end of this series, and again, this is something that we just did on a very impromptu kind of basis. Mel and I were working through these issues anyways, and I just thought it would be helpful to create this video series. But as you guys get into this material, because one of the things that I am committed to, not only as an African American attorney and as somebody who recently launched my practice, but I am very concerned in making sure that I am a resource to law students. And that comes to whether you need help academically, whether you're trying to find an internship, or you just need somebody to just bounce some ideas and talk about as you go through your law school career. So please do not ever hesitate to reach out to me directly. My phone number is 214-207-1349. My email address is eobi.esq@gmail.com. I'm available for you. You can always leave comments. Just reach out at any point that I can help. So with that said, we're talking about exam prep. And a lot of you may be reading this or viewing this at the beginning of the semester. It's good that you are, because it'll help structure your semester for things that you need to look forward to. If you're looking at this closer to exam time, that works as well. But I want to just talk to you about a few things about the exam preparation process and some things that you need to keep in mind that's going to help you really prepare in a way that's going to give you a great chance to get the grade that you're looking for. As we've mentioned all throughout the other videos, the law school exam is a lot different from any exam that you've ever encountered in your life in a number of ways. Number one, the law school exam is going to be given to you at the end of the semester after a long period of absorbing a great deal of material. Number two, the law school exam is not going to be the typical regurgitation exercise. You're not going to be asked basic questions about what are the elements of adverse possession, what are the elements of battery, what are the elements of an assault. You're not going to be asked to do that. What you're going to be required to do and to demonstrate on your exam is what the professors have been speaking to you about all year, about thinking like a lawyer, processing and analyzing things as a lawyer would. And so that requires you to analyze a set of facts, determine what law applies to that facts, and create an analysis that is well balanced and that demonstrates that you know how to think like a lawyer. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of basic points to get you ready for that. And so I'm just going to write some stuff on the board, because if you haven't already noticed, I'm a bit of a board freak, so I've got this huge board here in my office. But let's talk about some of the basics, right? Right. So some of the basics, we talked about the format, right? It's going to be it's going to be a 3-hour exam. It's going to be mostly essay. Some professors will give you some short answer. Some professors will give you some multiple choice. But trust me, they're not like the multiple choice questions that you're used to. It will require that you do analysis. We also talked about the material. You're going to go a whole semester of absorbing material, reading cases, doing briefs, and then all of that will come to bear in one 3-hour exam that you'll take at the end of the semester. So you better be ready. The other thing that you want to think about is time, because this is a timed exam. So just like the LSAT or any other exam that you've taken, you've got to develop your skill to do this analysis under time pressure. And for me, the way that I did that, realizing that my success on the exams would be contingent on me dealing with the time, as I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, I used to carry around a little timer, and I would time myself for everything that I did. I would give myself 15 minutes to read a case. I would give myself 30 minutes for study on this subject, 30 minutes for subject, and I would set my timer, and I would look at the timer, and I would force myself to complete that task within the time frame. What does that do? Over a process of, over a series of repeating that, it conditions you. Just like a runner or an athlete gets conditioned, their body gets conditioned to perform under certain situations, you want to condition yourself to be able to perform under the immense time pressure that you'll have on these exams. Okay? The other thing is what we talked about before, the PP, or your professor profile, right? Remember that the exam that you're taking is the exam that was written by your professor, not by the author of your canned outlines, not by the author of your horn book, but by your professor. So you've got to make sure you understand your professor, understand what they're looking for, and straight up ask them. Professors are more than happy to help you if you ask. And a lot of times I would go into a professor's office and I would say, listen, this is what I'm doing to prepare. I've read this, I've done this, I've read your articles, I've done all of this stuff. Can you let me know of anything else that I need to be thinking about to do well on your exam? What are the issues, or what are the questions or the types of mistakes that students make over and over? How do you like your exam questions to be structured? Is there a certain type of outline or a certain type of format that you prefer? Ask the professors these questions. They're not going to mislead you, and they will actually be quite impressed that you're taking the initiative to ask them about these questions, especially if you've taken the time to develop a relationship with them over the semester. Okay? So that's it for the basics. Now, one other basic that I want to do, and that is a topic that I like to refer to as your MSD. Right? What does MSD stand for? It's another one of my little corny expressions, a little thing that I came up with in law school. Don't hate me for it. All right. But MSD simply stands for Master Study Document. Now, what is that? Here's the thing. My first semester, I literally almost had a breakdown one afternoon because I looked at my study desk and I had canned outlines, I had briefs, I had class notes, I had all this stuff just all over the place, and I was having a hard time keeping up with some stuff, and then I couldn't find some things, and it was just becoming frustrating. So you know what I did? I said, you know what? I need to create one binder, one document, one thing that contains every single thing that I need to study for this exam. It's going to have my outline, it's going to have my class notes, it's going to have any handouts that the professor, it's going to have photocopies of pages from horn books that I think are relevant. And so whenever I'm studying for this exam and I have that master study document, I know that everything that I need to prepare myself to make an A on this exam is right here in this master study document. And it reduces a great deal of stress, and it makes you that much more efficient because the process of putting together the master study document is in and of itself preparation for the exam. So those are some of the basics. The format is different. The material is different. The time, you're going to have to be efficient. You're going to have to be surgical. There's no time to waste. The professor profile, you have to understand your professor. Who is your professor? Is your professor an academic? Or is your professor a former practicing or a current practicing attorney? Has your professor written articles? Have you read the articles? Have you talked to your professor? You've got to develop a psychological profile for your professor. It's absolutely critical. MSD, your master study document. Have you assembled everything that you need in one place so that you can have it readily accessible and so that you can get to the basics and get into real deep level study without having to carry around a big duffel bag or look like you're getting ready to get deployed into military service because you're carrying around 300 pounds of books at any given time. All right? Okay, so with that said, let's talk about some other things that I want you to talk about. And that one of them has to do with your outline. Okay? Now, a lot of people will put in a lot of good time, a lot of effort, and they'll create their outline and they say, man, I've got my outline. It's 250 pages, it's got everything in it, I'm ready to rock. Well, that is the first step to the next step that you need to take to really get ready for the exam. Now, the next thing that you need to do is to take that outline and convert it into what I call the exam document, right? Because your outline, you're not going to have time during a 3-hour exam to leisurely flip through your outline to find things. So what you got to do is you take your outline, okay, and then you start working old exams with your outline. You literally start working old exams. And as you work those old exams, you'll start to notice the things on your outline that you're relying on, that you're pulling from the most. And then what you do is you take your outline and you slim it down into what I call a bare essentials exam day document. That's the document that you're going to rely on the most on exam day. All right? Professors, and one of the biggest okey dokes that people fall for in law school is, oh, it's open book. I can bring in my count outline, I can bring all this stuff in. Professors like to do that, and the law school process is set up like that so they give you a false sense of security, to almost inspire a sense of complacency, because you're like, oh, I don't need to memorize this or commit it to memory if I can bring it with me. Here's the problem. It's 3 hours. Everybody else is typing furiously. You've got to get the issues on the paper to get points. You won't have time to flip through your casebook. You won't have time to flip through a 250-page outline. You need a 15 and 20-page document that is easily accessible, that is tabbed for efficient referencing, that's going to be your best friend on the day of the exam. Okay? The next thing is, how are you going to actually approach answering the exam questions? Now, you're going to learn about a lot of different outlines and a lot of different acronyms for how to organize an exam answer. Okay, there's IRAC, which is a big famous one that you hear a lot about: issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. There's a lot of different deals. Here is the point: your exam has to have some structure to it. If you give a professor a rambling stream of consciousness type of response, you're not going to make a good grade. Because let me give you the typical grading context in which your exam is being graded. It's been a long semester. The professor has worked extremely hard preparing you for the exam, writing the exam, developing the exam. The professor is giving you the exam, and the professor will normally be grading your exam over Christmas break or over the holiday break. So I always envision a professor sitting down at their desk or sitting down at their favorite chair in their den, reading exam papers, maybe sipping a glass of wine. I don't know, maybe some professors sip wine when they're grading. But they're reading answers, and I would submit to you that the answers that don't have a structure, the answers that are all over the place, that are rambling, they haven't been really well thought out, are the answers that frustrate and disrupt this idyllic, cool and calm grading experience that the professor is having. So now all of a sudden, instead of having a leisurely evening in front of the fire, drinking wine, reading, really well-written essays, they're reading an essay that is all over the place, and they're going to be frustrated. And when they're frustrated, your grade is going to be frustrated. But if the exam is structured in a very coherent fashion, you give a roadmap paragraph that kind of lets them know where you're going. You set it up in a very systematic way, and you systematically and methodically move through your analysis, you're going to make that professor happy, because you're going to make their job a lot easier, and they're going to be able to enjoy their wine or their sherry or whatever it is in front of the fire. So, how do you do that? There are 3 steps. I think 3 essential keys that you need to, or skills that you need to pick up to really do good at this. The first one is what I like to call recognize. Okay? Then you want to organize. And then you want to analyze. Now, IRAC, my problem with IRAC, and the thing that I tell students about IRAC to be afraid of, is that I really think that IRAC only kind of works here. Okay? IRAC gives you a good structure when you come to this analyze piece. But remember, in order to do well in exams, there are 3 things that you need to do. You need to be able to recognize. And then once you recognize, you need to organize. And then once you organize, then you get into the analyzing, and then the IRAC gives you a perfect framework for conducting that analysis. Now, what do I mean by recognize? Issue spotting. Issue spotting. Have you seen the issue? Fact patterns on law school exams are deliberately drafted in a way that makes this part very hard. Because the biggest issue, the biggest problem that you're going to have to face right off the bat is, what are the issues? What is the question, right? So you have to train yourself to be able to recognize, to look at a set of facts and recognize the legal issues that are triggered by that set of facts. And the only way that you do that is by working old exams, okay? So this is all about issue spotting, right? And it's all about facts. And the only way you get good at recognizing is by reviewing fact patterns, by asking yourself, even in daily situations, taking fact patterns and saying, how would this play out on an exam? Finding old exams that have old fact patterns, creating fact patterns, working with your study group to create fact patterns. That's the way you develop your skill for recognizing the issue. Okay, that's step one. Now, once you've recognized the issue, here's another place where people lose points. Right? Because in law school they tell you IRAC, 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 and so people just go in there and say, issue is, the rule is, and they haven't even provided a good structure or a good roadmap. You haven't taken time out to organize your answer. Okay? You have to organize. First step in organizing is roadmap. Okay? First, that is giving the professor a sense of where you're going. Now, I'm not saying spend a whole lot of time on this because the roadmap paragraph is not really going to give you a lot of points, but it's going to aesthetically add value to your exam, and it's going to help you because the professor is going to say, okay, this guy kind of knows where he's going. And the roadmap paragraph, assume your fact pattern has to do with negligence. And the question stem is, analyze the facts for a potential negligence claim. I would imagine the typical roadmap paragraph to that would be, negligence consists of proving 4 elements. I will first analyze to see if all the elements are met, and then I will analyze to see if any defenses are available, and then I will talk about any equitable issues or things that affect damages or whatever. You see, in 2 or 3 sentences. Okay, roadmap is not more than 2 or 3 sentences. If you're spending 3, 4, 5 sentences doing a roadmap, you're wasting time. You just want to give the professor a sense that you know where you're going to take them, and you're going to put some structure to your organization, right? So roadmap, the other way that you do this is headings, right? So I don't know if you're going to be writing your exam or if you're going to be typing your exam. If you're going to be writing your exam, you better make sure that your handwriting is pristine, so that you don't lose points just because of illegibility, all right? If you're going to be typing your exam, you want to make sure that you add some headings, you add some things that kind of help the professor see where you're going, and it's not just 3 pages of just mushy paragraph language. It just goes back and forth from, okay, let me talk about battery, okay, let me talk about assault. Oh, by the way, on battery, oh, I forgot about systematic, coherent format that follows a roadmap and that uses headings to address it. And then finally, make sure that you answer the question. Right? What is the question that has been posed, and have you answered it? If the professor asks you about jurisdiction, let's say it's civil procedure, and you get into a dialogue about venue, and you end up with a conclusion about it, well, have you really answered the question? So make sure that you've read the question. A lot of times in the anticipation or the urge to get started, we kind of gloss over the question and then we just get to typing. No, you want to read the question, take a few seconds to digest it, make sure you understand the question, make sure you understand what's being asked of you. Then you want to look at the facts from that standpoint to see what are the issues, recognize the issues. And then once you do that, you organize your answer, roadmap, use headings, okay? Then you get into analyze. Now this is where you can use IRAC to, once you've identified an issue, you can then use IRAC to further develop it on your exam. So IRAC stands for issue, rule, analysis, and conclusion. Issue, what is the question? What is the factual dispute? What is in contention, right? Or in contest, right? Rule, what is the applicable rule? Okay, what is the rule? What is the majority rule? What is the minority rule? Okay? Analysis, this is where most people will lose the bulk of their points, is in analysis. Because a lot of times the fact patterns are deceptively set up to push you to going into one direction and you don't look at the other side. When you talk about analysis, remember what I said before. These issues will play out in a conflict pairing. So you have to make sure that your analysis is, you're looking at issues and you're doing a balanced analysis. You're going back and forth. Well, if you consider this and this fact and this rule, but then if you consider this fact and this rule and this deal, ultimately conclusion, all right? This is the least important, the conclusion, right? What professors really want to see and where the money is and the grade is in your analysis. It's in your analysis, okay? Because different people can have different conclusions, right? The question is, how have you set up your analysis, okay? And so you want to make sure that you're balanced. You want to make sure that you are objective. You want to make sure that that you're weaving the facts into it, that you're not just giving a recitation of the law. An analysis in the legal context is applying the law to the facts. Applying the law to the facts. So there's always going to be a connection and an interplay between the law and the facts, and that's what the professor wants to show. You essentially want to show them your work as to how you got to that answer. Okay? And so that's pretty much it. Make sure that you're factoring in your exam, your professor input. Make sure that you're managing your timing dynamics, and then after the first semester, because a lot of your first year professors, you're going to have 2 semesters. And so if you haven't done too well on their first exam, you always want to go and sit with them and meet with them and go over your exam and say, hey, I didn't do as well as I wanted first semester on your exam, but I want to do better this year. Can we sit down and go over my exam and you give me some pointers or give me some insight on some things that I did wrong so that I can improve for this next semester? You always constantly want to do that. But in closing, again, the exam process is essential. This is where the rubber meets the road in law school. This is where you get to demonstrate that you were truly born to fly when it comes to law school, when it comes to the legal profession, when it comes to whatever it is that you do. And so you want to make sure that you follow these 3 steps: recognize, organize, analyze. Okay? As long as you follow these 3 steps and you're preparing accordingly, you're working with your outline, you're using your outline to create your exam day document, you will be ready. Okay? And so given that this is the final video in our series, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank Mel for agreeing to do this when I put this on his to-do list. He's been working really hard on this. I'm incredibly proud of this guy. He's going to do phenomenal in law school, as each and every one of you will. And so remember, never give up. It's a hard process, but millions of people have done it before you. You wouldn't have been able to get to where you are in life right now if you were not somebody who couldn't handle these types of challenges. So never doubt yourself, never fear, continue to work hard, continue to push, and you'll get it done. Okay? Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. See you later.